Hello and welcome to a very special edition of A Story in a Glass. This story in a glass was submitted to me by none other than Luna Arran, the ultimate whiskytube fan. Luna's great, I'm sure you all know her, she's way more famous than I am on YouTube. So everybody knows that I've got or you should know hopefully if you're watching this, that I have a playlist called A Story in a Glass. And A Story in a Glass is inspiration that comes to me when I'm drinking a really nice dram. For me, it's normally a form of a little story that I say in my head. And Luna's got one too. The Arran 12, Master of Distilling, told her a little story. And she wrote it down and she sent me it. And I'm going to read it out after this little thing that I want to say. And that is that I think it would be a great idea. I'm sure there's other people that are much more creative than I am that can that have stories. So I think what I want to do is a kind of plea to the whiskytube community. If you have a story, if you have a poem, if you have a drawing, anything that you've felt is creative that's come out of drinking whiskey, that can be put down on paper, I'd like you to get in touch. So it's neil@thewhiskitrials.com. Get in touch if you've got anything like that. And I think what I want to try and do is I want to, obviously, if you want me to read it out on YouTube, I will, and give you shout outs and all the rest of it. But I think what I really want to do is create some kind of YouTube community published book. So obviously I'm continuing to write stories. From my end, I think I've got another 3 that I need to read out. My friend Russell has also sent me some, and some poetry as well. So it's all kind of coming together, and I think if I got like another 10 or 20 people involved, we could quite easily come up with like a little whiskytube community book, which would be amazing, right? And we could self-publish it on Amazon, get it printed, charge a small fee for it. We could put that into some kind of fund, maybe for buying a cask, or maybe it could go to charity, or maybe we could just split it up depending on how many stories or poems or drawings that have been submitted, like split it up by page or whatever. I don't know. I'm open to suggestions and ideas on that front. But yeah, so that's what I thought I would do. But without further ado, let's read out Luna's story. So, are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. An Afternoon of Decisions. A story in Arran 12, Master of Distilling, by Luna Arran. She entered the dusty small shop. Daylight was filtering through milky windows like specks of dust dancing languidly in rays of late afternoon sunshine. Scents of perfume from previous customers still lingered. Wafts of Caribbean fruit combined with ever so slightly warm musky aromas and the smell of damp forest floors. It was a smell of home and adventures far away married together. She would find everything she needed in here, she was sure. Right up front she spotted a white velvet fabric, rather more ivory than a pure clean white. Slowly she caressed the cloth, and it felt soft, warm, and fuzzy under her fingers. Perfect for the bodice of her wedding dress. It would be simply cut. Straight lines gently hugging her body, frills quickly discarded as too girly and silly. She would need nothing of the sort. Her dress had to be otherworldly, ethereal and exotic. Silk and velvet combining to form a flowing sensation that brought out everything that was good about her. Suddenly, a sharp piercing in her left index finger brought her back to the dusty little shop. A forgotten needle. Blood welled and she quickly put her finger in her mouth as not to spoil the pristine white velvet. A warm iron taste filled her mouth, a metallic tang, more reminiscent of copper. Examining her fingertip, she stopped the bleeding with a tissue, the blood leaving small red dots on white. Colour! There had to be a dash of colour in the cream and ivory beauty she would be wearing. Not red though. Fine, dark, forest green embroidery decorating the hemlines, and a finely woven belt in exactly the same shade to match her moss green eyes. She smiled. Dry but slightly fruity champagne at the reception, she suddenly thought. Sparkling and prickling at the edges of your tongue, making people giggle and forget their worries for the afternoon. The thought of it made her mouth water. She saw sunlight reflected from the crystal glasses and the champagne, which had a rich, buttery colour, sparkling to match her excited mood. And as a snack to go with the champagne, something fancy and exotic, like grilled pineapple, with a bitter touch of starfruit syrup, coarse sea salt, and green pepper, with pistachios sprinkled on top. It would go perfectly with a pistachio mascarpone creme brulee, with salted, light caramel woven in fine threads on top. All this would be served in a slightly wild and overgrown courtyard in front of the old barn, autumn sun still warming people's bare arms. Inside, the tables would be covered in ivory linen to match her dress, irregularly placed on the musty floor, patiently expecting all her friends to finally start the feast. She left the shop, velvet and silk wrapped in fragrant paper, knowing she would not need much to convince her future wife. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story in a glass. It was Luna Arran's. So, cheers, Luna. Great story. I really loved reading it out. And I can see why this whiskey inspired a story, because it is something quite special. So, like I said, I hope you enjoyed the story. Stay tuned. Pop over to my next video if it's been released yet, because I'm going to be reviewing this, the Master of Distilling II. So this is what inspired Luna. I can see why. I was at the distillery not that long ago, and I nearly bought this. And do you know what? I think if I'd read the box, I probably would have. But I went for a distillery exclusive 11-year-old, which is in a previous video, and that was fantastic as well. But this one is right up me street. So anyway, Luna Arran, cheers, slàinte, and I doff me cap to you. The rays, come on man, rays of the late afternoon sunshine. She entered the dusty fucking hell. And she's damn, got so close, so close. She suddenly thought. Dry but slightly fruity champagne at the reception, she suddenly thought. Sparkling and prickling at the edge of your tongue. Come on, man. Fucking hell! With fuck's sake, Luna. Jesus Christ. Man, with salted light caramel. Dry but slightly fruity champagne at the reception, she reflected from the fucking hell. Suddenly, a sharp pierce. Fuck. Damn. Dry but slightly fruity champagne at the reception, she thought, with salted, light caramel woven in fine threads on top. This would be served in a slightly wild and overgrown courtyard in front of the old barn. Nah, f that bit up, motherfucker. Pepper with pistachios sprinkled on top. Blah blah blah. She suddenly thought. It's very difficult to say. Clearly placed on the Oh, fuck. Mustly. God damn.